10. Mihir Yast continues with 66. With whom proceed Asha Vangohe and Pa Rende on her light chariot. The awful manly courage, the awful kingly glory, the awful sovereign sky, the awful cursing thought of the wise, the awful vivacious of the faithful, and he who keeps united together the many faithful worshippers of Mazda. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. Awful as in awe, full, awe-inspiring. And part 17 compromises 67 to 69. 67. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, who drives along on his high-wheeled chariot made of a heavenly substance, from the Karshvara of Arazahe to the Karshvara of Havanirata, the bright one, accompanied by the wheel of sovereignty, the glory made by Mazda, and the victory made by Ahura. 68. Whose chariot is embraced by the great Asha Van Guhe, to whom the law of Mazda opens a way that he may go easily, whom 4 heavenly steeds, white, shining, seen afar, beneficent, endowed with knowledge, swiftly carry along the heavenly space, while the cursing thought of the wise pushes it forward. 69. From whom all the Evas unseen and the Varenya fiends flee away in fear. Oh, may we never fall across the rush of the angry Lord, who goes and rushes from 1,000 sides against his foe, he of the 10,000 spies, the powerful, all-knowing, undeceivable God, or entity, right? Heavenly being, not necessarily calling the thing as a god, but before Zarathustra and after him, people were worshiping these things as gods, so I'm just relating what the verses say. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 18. 70 through 72. 70. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, before whom Varathragna, made by Ahura, runs opposing the foes in the shape of a boar. A sharp tooth he bore, a sharp-jawed boar, that kills at one stroke pursuing, wrathful, with a dripping face, strong with iron feet, iron forepaws, iron weapons, and an iron tail, and iron jaws. 71. Who, eagerly clinging to the flinging foe along with manly courage, smites the foe in the battle, and does not think he has smitten him, nor does he consider it a blow until he has smitten away the marrow, and the column of life, the marrow and the spring of existence. And there's some lessons about mystical techniques and stuff that can be connected to some of that stuff, but that would have to be a program by itself, wouldn't it? 72. He cuts all the limbs to pieces and mingles together with the earth the bones, hair, brains, and blood of the men who have lied unto Mithra. For his brightness and glory we offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. There's mystical experiences where this isn't, part of the punishment of what you've, and you're trapped in this hell realm where this stuff's being done to you. It's difficult unless it's happened to you. The disassembling and schematizing and cleansing, and it's an interesting experience nonetheless. 19. Compromises 73 to 78. 73. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, and so on, sleepless, never awake, who, with hands lifted up, rejoicing, cries out, speaking thus, 74, O Ahura Mazda, the most beneficent spirit, maker of the material world, thou Holy One. If men would worship me, was the sacrifice, in which I were invoked by my own name, as they worship other entities with sacrifices in which they are invoked by their own names, and I should come to the faithful at the appointed time. I should come in the appointed time of my beautiful immortal life. 75. May we keep our field. May we never be exiles from our field, exiles from our home, exiles from our borough, exiles from our town, exiles from our country. Say 75, May. 76. Thou dashest in pieces the malice of the magicians, of the malicious, the malice of the men of malice. Dash thou in pieces the killers of faithful men. Well, it's reading if these are evil magicians, maybe, or at least malignant magicians, Thou hast good horses, thou hast a good chariot, thou art bringing help at every appeal, and art powerful. 77. I will pray unto thee for help with many consecrations, with good consecrations of libations, with many offerings, with good offerings of libations, that we, abiding in thee, may long inhabit a good abode, full of all the riches that can be wished for. 78. Thou keepest those nations that tender a good worship to Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures. Thou dashest in pieces those that delight in havoc. Unto thee will I pray for help. May he come to us for help, the awful, most powerful Mithra, the worshipful and praiseworthy, the glorious Lord of nations. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Part 20 compromises 79 and 80. 79. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, who made a dwelling for Rashnu, and to whom Rashnu gave all his soul for long friendship. 80. Thou art a keeper and protector of the dwelling of those that lie not. Thou art the maintainer of those that lie not. With thee hath Varathragna, made by Ahura, contracted the best of all friendships, and thus it is how so many men who have lied unto Mithra, even privily, lie smitten down on the ground. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Part 21 is verse 81 and 82. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, sleepless and ever awake, who made a dwelling for Rashnu, and to whom Rashnu gave all his soul for long friendship. 82. To whom Ahura Mazda gave 1,000 senses and 10,000 eyes to see, and with those eyes and those senses he watches the man who injures Mithra, the man who lies unto Mithra, through whose eyes and those senses he is undeceivable, he of the 10,000 spies, the powerful, all-knowing, undeceivable entity. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Now, could the word be something like the worshiping beings? Much like, the Christian misunderstanding of some of the stuff in some of the Jewish references, or, at least Semitic references. Part 22 compromises 83 to 87. 83. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and never awake, whom the Lord of the country invokes for help, with hands uplifted, whom the Lord of the town invokes for help, with hands uplifted. 84. Whom the Lord of the borough invokes for help, with hands uplifted, whom the master of the house invokes for help, with hands uplifted, whom the in danger of death invokes for help, with hands uplifted, whom the poor man, who follows the good law, when wronged and deprived of his rights, invokes for help, with hands uplifted. 85. The voice of his wailing reaches up to the sky. It goes over the earth, all around. It goes over the 7 Karshvaras, whether he utters his prayer in a low tone of voice or aloud. And like in the Quran, it talks about avoiding the extremism of, but you don't, you don't yell and that sort of stuff too. Now there, you can do extra stuff, whatever. You worship in all modes and all whatever, but the way of performing the rituals is not, to just be loud, nor to be silent or whispering or whatever. 86. The cow driven astray. I didn't articulate it. The cow driven astray invokes him for help, longing for the stables. When will that bull, Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, bring us back and make us reach the stables? When will he turn us back to the right way from the den of the Droog, where we were driven? 682. I'm sorry, that's the footnote number, and we'll get to that when the Mihir Yast is done with, right? 87. And to him with whom Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, has been satisfied, he comes with help, and of him with whom Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, has been offended, he crushes down the house, the borough, the town, the province, the country. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. 23 compromises. 88 to 94. 88. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, to whom the enlivening, healing, fair, lordly, golden-eyed Ha'ama offered of a sacrifice on the highest of the heights, on the Hara'ete Baresa, he, the undefiled, to one undefiled, with undefiled Barisma, undefiled libations, and undefiled words. 89. Whom the holy Ahura Mazda has established as a priest, quick in performing the sacrifice, and loud in song. He performed the sacrifice with a loud voice as a priest, quick in sacrifice and loud in song, a priest to Ahura Mazda, a priest to the Ameshaspentas. His voice reached up to the sky and went over the earth all around, went over the 7 Karshvaras, the continents. 90. Who first lifted up Ha'amas, the marijuana, ephedra, opium drink with up to 37 other things according to another recipe. Some of that enhanced the high, some of it whatever, but let's look at it in the symbolic importance of it. In a mortar inlaid with stars and made of a heavenly substance, Ahura Mazda longed for him. The Ameshaspentas longed for him. For the well-shapen body of him whom the swift horse sun awakes for prayer from afar. You can listen to the different sounds of nature and how they put you to sleep and wake you up. And nowadays we have an alarm clocks for that sort of thing to wake us up for the dawn prayer and all that. 91. Hail to Mithra, Lord of the wide pastures, who has 1,000 ears and 10,000 eyes. Thou art worthy of sacrifice and prayer. Mayst thou have sacrifice and prayer in the houses of men. Hail to the man who shall offer thee sacrifice, with the holy wood in his hand, the barisma in his hand, the holy meat in his hand, the holy mortar in his hand, with his hands well washed, with the mortar well washed, with the bundles of barisma tied up, the ha'ama uplifted, and the ahuna, the area, sung through. 92. The holy Ahura Mazda confessed that religion, and so did Bahu Mano, and so did Asha Bahista, so did Kshatra Vairya, so did Spenta Armaete, so did Ha'urvatat and Ameratat, and all the Ameshaspentas long for and confessed his religion. The kind Mazda conferred upon him the mastership of the world, and so did they, who saw thee amongst all creatures, the right Lord and Master of the world, the best cleanser of these creatures. 93. So mayest thou in both worlds, mayest thou keep us in both worlds, O Mithra, Lord of the wide pastures, both in this material world and in the world of the spirit, from the fiend of death, from the fiend Ashma, from the fiendish hordes that lift up the spear of havoc, and from the onset of Ashma, wherein the evil-doing Ashma rushes along with Vidotu, made by the Devas. 94. So mayest thou, O Mithra, Lord of the wide pastures, give swiftness to our teams, strength to our own bodies, and that we may watch with full success those who hate us, smite down our foes, and destroy at one stroke our adversaries, our enemies, and those that hate us. For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Part 24 compromises 95 through 101. 95. Compromises verses. I'm sorry, missed one. 95 to 98. 95. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and never awake, who goes over the earth, all her breath over, after the setting of the sun, touches both ends of this wide, round earth, whose ends lie afar, and surveys everything that is between the earth and the heavens. 96. Swinging in his hands a club, with 100 knots, 100 edges, that rushes forwards and fells men down, a club cast out of red brass, of strong golden brass, the strongest of all weapons, the most victorious of all weapons. 97. From whom Angra Inu, who is all death, flees away in fear, from whom Echma, the evil-doing Peshotanu, flies away in fear, from whom the long-handed Bushyasta flees away in fear, and from whom all the Devas, unseen, and the Varenya fiends fly away in fear. 98. Oh, may we never fall across the rush of Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, when in anger. May Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, never smite us in his anger. He who stands up upon this earth as the strongest of all the entities, the most valiant of all the entities, the most energetic of all the entities, the swiftest of all the entities, the most fiend-smiting of all the entities, he, Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, for his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. And so on. Part 25 compromises verses 99 to 101. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, from whom all the Devas, unseen, and the Varenya fiends fly away in fear. The Lord of nations, Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, drives forward at the right-hand side of this wide round earth, whose ends lie afar. 100. At his right hand drives the good, holy Sarasha. At his left hand drives the tall and strong Rashnu. On all sides around him drive the waters, the plants, and the Pravashas of the faithful. 101. In his might he ever brings to them falcon-feathered arrows, and when driving he himself comes there, where are nations. Enemy to Mithra, he first and foremost strikes blows with his club on the horse and his rider. He throws fear and fright upon the horse and his rider. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. And a lot of what we see elsewhere where this could have been developed from is the two, like the prayers upon, sacrifices upon, readings of scriptures or recitings of scriptures upon. It's not that it's two. The worship is still of Ahura Mazda. But, they're on the behalf of, or the legacy or such passes on. That's what I mean in some of my videos. When I say legacy, I mean the influence. The continuance of, their cause. 102 and 103 is part 26. 102. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, the warrior of the white horse, of the sharp spear, the long spear, the quick arrows, foreseeing and the clever. 103. Whom Ahura Mazda has established to maintain and look over all this moving world, and who maintains and looks over all this moving world, who never sleeping wakefully guards the creation of Mazda, who never sleeping wakefully maintains the creation of Mazda. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 27 compromises 104 to 111. 104. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, whose long arms, strong with Mithra strength, encompass what he seizes in the easternmost river, and what he beats with the westernmost river, and what is by the Sanaka of the Ranga, and what is by the boundary of the earth. Well, you can believe in a round earth and say that the earth has boundaries, and I'm not saying that people in some of these cultures didn't believe that, particularly some of the priests that were writing some of these things down, but remember, a lot of this is representative, not revelation itself. But 105. And thou, O Mithra, encompassing all this around, do thou reach it all over with thy arms. The man without glory, led astray from the right way, grieves in his heart. The man without glory thinks thus in himself, that careless Mithra does not see all the evil that is done, nor all the lies that are told. 106. But I think thus in my heart, should the evil thoughts of the earthly man be 100 times worse, they would not rise so high as the good thoughts of the heavenly Mithra. Should the evil words of the earthly man be 100 times worse, they would not rise so high as the good words of the heavenly Mithra. Should the evil deeds of the earthly man be 100 times worse, they would not rise so high as the good deeds of the heavenly Mithra. 107. Should the heavenly wisdom in the earthly man be 100 times greater, it would not rise so high as the heavenly wisdom in the heavenly Mithra. And thus, should the ears of the earthly man hear 100 times better, he would not hear so well as the heavenly Mithra, whose ear hears well, who has 1,000 senses and sees every man that tells a lie. Mithra stands up in his strength, he drives in the awfulness of royalty, and sends from his eyes beautiful looks that shine from afar, saying, sayings in parentheses, so that's not there. 108. Who will offer me a sacrifice? Who will lie unto me? Who thinks me an entity worthy of a good sacrifice? Who thinks me worthy only a bad sacrifice? To whom shall I in my might impart brightness and glory? To whom bodily health? To whom shall I in my might impart riches and full weal? W-E-A-L, whom shall I bless by raising him a virtuous offspring? 109. To whom shall I give in return without his thinking of it the awful sovereignty, beautifully arrayed, with many armies, and most perfect, the sovereignty of an all-powerful tyrant, who fells down heads, valiant smiting, and unsmitten, who orders chastisement to be done, and his order is done at once, which he has ordered in his anger. O Mithra, when thou art offended and not satisfied, he soothes thy mind and makes Mithra satisfied. 110. To whom shall I in my might impart sickness and death? To whom shall I impart poverty and sterility? Of whom shall I at one stroke cut off the offspring? 111. From whom shall I take away, without us thinking of it, the awful sovereignty, beautifully arrayed, with many armies, and most perfect, the sovereignty of an all-powerful tyrant, who fells down heads, valiant, smiting, and unsmitten, who orders chastisement to be done, and his order to be done is done at once, which he has ordered in his anger. O Mithra, while thou art satisfied and not angry, he moves thy heart to anger, and makes Mithra unsatisfied. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. But, so, Mithra is praying for the guidance, just like all these heavenly beings, these light beings, these unfallen angels. In Sanskrit, you say Devis, which is not the same as the Evas, that's different. So the Ahuras and Yasts and all that, they're getting their command from God. They're waiting, oh, well, what sort of person? So instead of praying to them, pray to the God that's giving the orders to this. But the idea is being filled that, well, they're, this thing's hearing. Well, again, it's following other orders. So part 28 is 112 through 114. 112. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the lord of wide pastures, so on, sleepless and ever awake, a warrior with a silver helm, a golden cuirass, who kills with the poniard, strong, valiant, lord of the borough. Bright are the ways of Mithra, by which he goes towards the country. When wishing well, he turns its plains and vales to pasture grounds. 113. And then cattle and males come to graze, as many as he wants. May Mithra and Ahura, the high entities, come to us for help. When the poniard lifts up its voice aloud, when the nostrils of the horses quiver, when the poniards, when the strings of the bows whistle and shout, sharp arrows, and then the brood of those whose libations are hated fall smitten to the ground with their hair torn off. 114. So mayst thou, O Mithra, lord of wide pastures, give swiftness to our teams, strength to our own bodies, that we may watch with full success those who hate us, smite down our foes, and destroy at one stroke our adversaries, our enemies, and those who hate us. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. 29 compromises 115 to 118. 115. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the lord of wide pastures, sleepless and ever awake. O Mithra, lord of wide pastures, thou master of the house, of the borough, of the town, of the country, thou Zarathustrotema. 116. Mithra is 20-fold between two friends, are two relations. Mithra is 30-fold between two men of the same group. Mithra is 40-fold between two partners. Mithra is 50-fold between wife and husband. Mithra is 60-fold between two pupils of the same master. Mithra is 70-fold between the pupil and his master. Mithra is 80-fold between the son-in-law and his father-in-law. Mithra is 90-fold between two brothers. 117. Mithra is 100-fold between the father and the son. Mithra is 1,000-fold between two nations. Mithra is 10,000-fold when connected with the law of Mazda. And then he will be every day of victorious strength. 118. May I come unto thee with a prayer that goes lowly or goes highly, as the sun rises above the Hara Berezaete, and then fulfills its career. So may I, O Spitma, with a prayer that goes lowly or goes highly, rise above the will of the fiend Angra Ma'inu, the devil. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Mithra hears what they're referring here, and so on. 30 compromises 119 to 119 Oh, 122. 119. We sacrifice unto Mithra, the lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake. Offer up a sacrifice unto Mithra, O Spitama, and order thy peoples to do the same. Let the worshipper of Mazda sacrifice unto thee, with small cattle, with black cattle, with flying birds, gliding forward on wings. Essentially, I was reading in one of the volumes of, this here, that the stillborn, if they're not rotting, hence the black animals are the ones that, you can eat those. 120. To Mithra, all the faithful worshippers of Mazda must give strength and energy with offered and proffered ha'amas, which the Za'atar proffers unto him and gives in sacrifice. Let the faithful man drink of the libations cleanly prepared, which if he offers them unto Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, Mithra will be pleased with him and without anger. Well, more specifically, it's that, when you slaughter an animal, sometimes you don't know it's pregnant and, what's in there, as long as it's well-formed and not, decaying or something. 121. Zarathustra asked him, O Ahura Mazda, how shall the faithful man drink the libations cleanly prepared, which if he does, and if he offers them unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, Mithra will be placed with him and without anger. 122. Ahura Mazda answered, let them wash their bodies 3 days and 3 nights, let them undergo 30 strokes for the sacrifice and prayer unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, let them wash their bodies 2 days and 2 nights, let them undergo 20 strokes for the sacrifice and prayer unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, let no man drink of these libations who does not know the sta'ata yasnya vispa ratavo. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 31 compromises 123 to 135. 123, we sacrifice unto Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, and so on, sleepless and ever awake, to whom Ahura Mazda offered up a sacrifice in the shining Garo Namana. 124, with his arms lifted up towards immortality, Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, drives forward from the shining Garo Namana in a beautiful chariot that drives on ever swift, adorned with all sorts of ornaments and made of gold. 125. 4 stallions draw that chariot, all the same white color, living on heavenly food and undying. The hooves of their 4 feet are shod with gold, the hooves of their hind feet are shod with silver. All are yoked to the same